Now to present the award for excellence in exploration, please welcome my friend Greg Stone, Senior Vice President and Chief Scientist for Oceans for Conservation International.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Philippe. And boy, I sure wish Peter could be here. I am happy to be here and excited to present an award to Dr. Don Walsh, one of the greatest oceanographers and explorers of our time. He's known, among many things, for when he and Jacques Picard piloted the bathyscaphe Trieste when it made a record-breaking descent into the Marianas Trench on 23rd of January 1960. The deepest point in the world's oceans, over 35,000 feet beneath the surface. That means that if you were parked on the bottom after this dive and you cut Mount Everest off at sea level, you put it down on top of the sub, you'd still have a mile of ocean above the top of Mount Everest. I mean, they were really, really deep. My deepest dive has been to a mere 18,000 feet. So I know a little bit about how cold, dark, mysterious, and wonderful the deep sea is. Don knows about that, but he also knows about a lot of other stuff. Unlike the others of us in the room that have dived in deep sea submersibles, nowadays it's relatively safe. But can you imagine climbing into that 1960s bathyscaphe technology that had never been used and lowering yourself down to the very bottom of the sea, a place where the pressure is so great it's the equivalent of having one or two elephants standing on each square inch on the outside of the sub. And I remember that Don very kindly told me when I first met him many years ago at the Explorers Club in New York. I asked him to describe what happened when they got there. And he said, Greg, we got down to the bottom after 5.5 hours, and the two halves of our sphere slightly shifted under the pressure. Can you imagine? But Don's career and accomplishments before and after the Trieste dive are too numerous to mention in detail. You can read some of them in the program. But let me at least highlight a few things. Don became a United States Navy commissioned naval officer after graduating from Annapolis in 1954. He served as a captain in the U.S. Navy, spent 15 years at sea, mostly in submarines, and was a submarine commander. Don is also a former academic dean. Don was named one of the world's great explorers by Life magazine. In 2010, National Geographic bestowed his highest honor, the Hubbard Medal, and the U.S. Department of Navy also awarded Don as Distinguished Public Service Award. Tonight, we honor Don in the memory of Peter Benchley, my best friend and dive buddy, and the greatest ocean writer of our time. I wish Peter were here tonight with us to honor Don, who made one of the greatest contributions to the exploration of our seas and has devoted his life to the most important, life-giving feature of our planet, the oceans. So tonight, we honor you, Don, and we thank you, Don, and all of our best wishes.
We were supposed to only talk 2 minutes, but I've been clocking everybody. Jane, of course, she's now a Washington bureaucrat, no longer an Oregonian like I am, so she gets to talk more than that. And our first speaker with a marvelous program, and he could hardly do justice to it in 4 minutes. So maybe with that generous introduction by Greg, I'll just ask if there are any questions. But seriously, folks. This is a particularly poignant award for me because I was born in Berkeley, across the bay. My grades weren't good enough when I graduated from Alameda High School to go to Cal, so I went to Annapolis. Moved in a different direction. But my mother used to bring me over here to the Steinhardt Aquarium, and we would, we'd go to the tea room across the way and all of that. And we lived up in the Kensington area of Berkeley Hills, and I could look straight across the bay as a little boy. It was the middle of the Depression, so I didn't have many toys, but I could see them building that bridge over the Golden Gate Bridge. So instead of having a Meccano set or Rector set to play with. I watched the big one as they built that bridge, and I could look across the bay, and the Navy fleet would come in the 30s, and the Klieg lights in the sky, and all the battleships and stuff, and I could watch all of these ships going out to the west and disappearing over the horizon. And I kept thinking to myself, I wonder what's out there. That's what I want to do. And I did it. And I've been going to sea now 60 years, almost continuously. I've got 4 voyages this year. I was in the Antarctic in February and the Northwest Passage the end of this year and so on. And I enjoy it every bit as much as I did as when I was a young midshipman on the battleship Wisconsin and crossed into the Atlantic for the first time. So the ocean is a very special place for me. I can't use all of the wonderful words you've used in talking about your interest in the ocean. So it's something deep inside, and it's part of me. And I guess my reason for being here is sort of like being the old man in the sea. When Jacques and I surfaced after the deep dive in January 1960, we couldn't find the ships. I don't know where they went. We're 200 miles off of Guam, and we're sitting on top of this thing. We're wondering where our 2 support ships are because we'd like to go home. And we were talking, when do you think somebody's going to be back? When are you going to do it again? And our most conservative guess was about 2 years. Well, it's been a half century, and no one's gone back. And it's not that you have to go do that. It's not like Avis being second best or something. It's that today all of the manned submersibles in the world are limited to about 20,000 foot depth. So that's roughly 2/3 the depth of the world ocean. And by not being able to go that last 16,000 feet, you are leaving out about 3% of the total floor of the ocean that's available. In other words, you can see 97% if you go to 20,000 feet. But that part that you leave out are all the trench systems, which are vital to be understood, to understand our fundamental Earth processes, and we can't get there. Last May, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution sent down an unmanned vehicle, Nereus, which has done some very good work at that depth, and this may be the wave of the future. But if we're going to study and know the oceans, we have to study and know all of the oceans, so we can't leave out this last 3%. If there were mountains and they said you couldn't climb the highest 3%, that'd seem rather silly, wouldn't it? And yet in the ocean they're saying no, because if you can design for 2/3 the depth of the ocean, you don't have to spend as much for submersibles, and you can get a lot more work done by saving that kind of money. And I say that's baloney, and I should talk about baloney with eating this wonderful food. It's nonsense, and we have to, as you're thinking about the ocean, we have to think of it as huge volume, and we need to study all of it and all of its greatest depths. So thank you very much for this award and letting me talk for longer than 2 minutes.